since we have people in different countries, they might not be
Totally.
awake at the
Yep.
moment. So I will go live right now
Great.
and I will just double check if it's on YouTube because sometimes I'm afraid it doesn't work.
No worries. Do what you need.
Okay, there it is. It's working. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Asian Queens in Animation. We are here for our building a career in visual effects conversation with Charmaine over here. So thank you all for attending and feel free to put in any questions you have in the chat box and we'll get to them in the last 20 minutes of our conversation. But for now, I would like to thank Charmaine for being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, everyone, and nice to meet you, Mansi.
Yes.
Super excited to do this. And yeah, let me know what we can start with.
Yes. So why don't we start with a short introduction? So feel free to share your name, where you work, your pronouns, and how you culturally identify.
Yeah, so my name is Charmaine Chan. I identify as she, her. And to go back from the beginning, I was born and raised on the islands of Hawaii. My parents immigrated to the US from Hong Kong about a year before I was born. I have an older sister, and so I was actually the first generation born in the States. And I mean, I had quite an incredible life growing up in Hawaii, just because, it's a lovely island, and it's one of those very unique places where, for me, being Chinese American, I didn't feel like I was left out or anything because Hawaii is very culturally diverse, and you have people from all different places of the world, a lot of Japanese, Native Hawaiian, Portuguese, American, like everything you can think of. And so it's such a big melting pot that I was so used to being in diverse environments to begin with. Um, I ended up going to UC Irvine in Southern California for college. And that was in, when you're that close to LA and in Southern California, it's also, such a cool, diverse amount of people as well. And funny thing, I mean, not really funny, slightly racist, but they called UC Irvine University of Chinese Immigrants, which is not a great thing. But at the same time, it was once again, I never felt out of place in a community. I studied studio art at UC Irvine, where I focused more on like photography and video production. And it was great. I mean, I did a lot of hands-on photography with film, did a lot of just like black and white and color film. And also this was kind of when digital was becoming a bigger thing. And so my school actually just set up like a green screen studio, and we were doing digital footage, but it was still digital footage on like mini DV that you had to then transcode. And it was like a whole process, but I absolutely loved it. And I feel like that was kind of like my foray into just like creating digital media. Actually, sorry, let me step back. To be
No
honest,
worries.
I did do a lot of digital media even before college. I used to be the biggest Spice Girls fan, and so I I used to create Spice Girl fan websites, and
That
that's
is
when I did.
amazing.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I
Like
keep
that's when I learned.
remembering that like the generations now won't
Hmm,
experience Spice Girls. I'm just
it's so sad, so sad. It's like the
so
origins of girl power right there, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that's when I learned like Photoshop and HTML and JavaScript and just like creating media content. And so that's when it kind of like moved into my college interest as well.
Awesome. That's so cool. And sort of going back to when you used to make, websites for Spice Girls and all of that, when did you realize that there was more and that you could have a creative career? And did you know what you wanted to do at the beginning, or was it something you learned as you went um, towards your career?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I felt like all throughout high school, I was definitely pushed to do more like math and sciences because I excelled in it. And my dad noticed I was really interested in doing things on the computer. And I had cousins who like worked at Microsoft or like software engineers. So my dad was like very set on like, all right, Charmaine's gonna go the same path, sciences and math, and like gonna be a computer science degree and like work at a tech company. Um, And don't get me wrong, I absolutely do love programming as well. Like I took AP Comp Sci in high school, and like I was definitely going towards that direction. But as I was coding, like for me, I'm a very visual learner and a visual person overall. And so like looking at text all day, like you could get visual results from programming, but at the same time, just like I wanted more than just text. Um, and so for me, when I was trying to declare my major for college, I was like, what's something I could get into that kind of does that, right? Like that has a little bit of tech, but also has something that's a little bit more artistic. Um, and at that time, visual effects wasn't really something that was known in universities. And so to me, I was like, oh, maybe I can consider a career in like graphic design and web design because that does a combo of both. And so I landed on the studio art major because there's a digital art kind of emphasis on it. But yeah, it was interesting because it was definitely something that I kind of had to discuss with my parents quite a lot. Like there were definitely arguments about me choosing an art major over a science or math based major. Just like from the start, my parents, well, mainly my father was very much like, how can you make money out of doing art? Like, how can you sell paintings? The very stereotypical things, because their idea of an artist is not someone that can make an income. Um, and luckily, my mom is very level-headed. She generally like has my back on things and was like trying to tell my dad that like, Charmaine can definitely do and make a career out of her art. I mean, the thing was like, I was already doing websites on the side and like making some extra cash. And so for my mom, she's like, oh, she already kind of has like a business oriented mindset and she knows that she can get a career out of this. So we should just, believe in her and give her a chance. And eventually my dad did cave in and was like, all right, you can give me a studio art major, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, it was quite a journey. I mean, it's been a journey for my parents because it's so hard to explain the digital medium to those who are not used to it. But in this day and age, I feel like most people are a lot more aware about it than when I first started off.
Yes, I agree, because I think even now, all of us who are still like interested in it, like there's always conversations about what even we want to do, because um Asian parents don't really understand, like a lot of people in general just don't understand what art is. So it's not just drawing, there's also all these digital arts, I mean, graphic design is art, all of this is art. So there's like a whole variety of career paths people could take from just art. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad that
like
it's sort of getting a little bit of
it has more
yeah,
traction now.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I mean, the thing is like we're also a very visual society, right? Like
Yes.
everything is based on advertising and like looking at things around you in this world, right?
Mhm.
And during this lockdown, I feel like it's been emphasized even more, um, just because people are stuck at home, and what are they,
Yeah,
referring to these days?
exactly.
Everyone's just looking at some kind of digital medium, and people have to make that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's definitely more of a case for it these days than
Yeah.
back in the days, but it's all an educational kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And now that you've been in the industry for a while and you've been working on several projects, how do your parents feel now with and do they look at your name in the credits and sit there like, "Oh my God, it's Charmaine."
Yeah, no, I mean, my parents are, I absolutely love them. They've been super
Yeah.
supportive. They helped me throughout college, and you know, I wouldn't be where I am without them. But yeah, absolutely, they are very proud now and actually finally understand what I
Yay.
do. Though it's still quite difficult for them to like explain it to their friends.
Mhm.
But generally, they're like, Charmaine works on movies, and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, that's the best. I guess I'll hop on to our next question, which is, what is your current job title, and how did you decide on this discipline to focus on, um, as you were growing?
Yeah, so I'm currently a lead compositor at Industrial Light and Magic. I've been at the company for about 14, almost 15 years now. Compositing was definitely not something that I jumped right into when I started visual effects. I actually started as a technical assistant, so this kind of winds back to when I was doing AP Comp Sci. I have some programming. I do some scripting. I've always enjoyed that side of things. But I originally applied for an art PA position, and they saw my list of skills, and they actually thought I'd be more appropriate for this TA position. And so, yeah, I applied for it, interviewed, and they took me on, which was really cool. And it's very rare, I guess, for anyone in whether it be animation or visual effects to be in a company that long. But I've learned and grown so much in this company. Like, they've given me so many great opportunities. There's no reason for me to really go anywhere else. But at the same time, like I said, I started as a TA, and that was more like data management and like dealing with files coming in and out of the company. And I did that for a bit. It taught me a bit about the visual effects pipeline, but it wasn't until I moved into the assistant technical director position that really gave me the breadth of like the whole VFX pipeline. And the reason why is because you're kind of like the intermediary person between artists and tech folk. And you're essentially helping create processes, tools, and whatever folks need to get their jobs done. So that required me learning things about Maya, or learning about different renderers, using 3ds, using Nuke, like every discipline you can think of. I had to learn how their process and pipeline worked so that I could help create the tools for the artists. And it was through that I was like, I kind of because I came from more of a graphic design 2D background. I also did some motion graphics before I worked at ILM. I kind of had a feel of just more 2D compositing based things. And so I definitely honed in on the compositing side of visual effects and got to know a lot of compositors, what they needed, worked a lot with comp soups, and kind of worked my way in by helping set up like our 3D stereo pipeline and our just overall new canonical pipeline. And because a lot of supervisors saw that I knew a lot about the compositing back end side of the pipeline, they gave me the chance to like start doing some shots, which was really cool. And so yeah, it's just one of those things where you kind of just need to like force yourself in front of folks and be like, hey, this is what I'm really interested in, and this is how I can help you with whatever you're doing. That way we both can help each other to get to where we need to be. And so yeah, I've been compositing probably for like the last 8 years or so. And I've done a bunch of film projects, but until recently, I just moved out to London about 2 years ago because ILM started a new episodic division because of things like Mandalorian, and had the opportunity to lead a team of compositors. So that's kind of how my path went. It's not the most direct path, but it was definitely a good experience because I feel like what makes a lot of the best visual effects artists are the ones who understand every part of the process, like whether it be modeling or animation or lighting, like you need to understand that, but you also need to have a good understanding of just like filmmaking in general,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And sort of since you mentioned you've the next question sort of leads into that leadership. And I wanted to ask, what has your experience been being in a leadership position in visual effects?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where, similarly to what we were talking about earlier, it was very difficult for me to see myself in a leadership position originally because there were not as many women or people of color in those leadership positions. However, the more I, got to know folks within the company and got to, see everyone who works at a company, there actually are a lot of women and a lot of people of color who work in the industry. The thing is, they're just usually the ones who are not in the spotlight. And to me, like there were 2 Asian women supervisors at ILM that I was like totally doting on and was like, oh, I can't wait to one day be like them. and they were, amazing women. I got to work with them a couple of times. There's one of them is still there. One of them sadly left for another company, but just having someone to be able to, learn the ropes from was really great. But, just knowing that it's a possibility makes all that difference. And so for me, a lot of my leading folks, is coming from a place of being as inclusive as possible. Because I feel like the best work comes when you have all different types of people collaborating together, all these different ideas. And the one thing I love about working at ILM is that everyone is very open about learning and teaching and sharing of ideas. Um, and it's like, for me, that's one of the main things that I emphasize. Like, to me, there's never stupid questions. Ask as many questions as you want, because I'm learning as well. I ask questions all the time, in which case you should also ask questions all the time. So yeah, I feel like, you know, it's something like leading, for sure, is something that is tough. And when you work at a company that's such a global company like ILM, we have offices across, I think at this point, 4 or 5 different countries. Um, you learn that every different person has such a good insight on things, and we're all there for a reason. You're all the best artists, and it's all about that collaboration.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out, I love how you said that you're still learning, because something, as especially students and people who are trying to come in, we always think that in order to be in leadership positions, we have to know everything. But it's always like, no matter where you go, you're always learning, or you're improving on what you've already learned. So it's always that sort of process, which I thought is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, like, if I'm not challenging myself, if I'm not learning something new, then clearly I'm not at the right place. Like,
Mhm.
because there's endless things to learn, right? And there's endless
Yes.
things and possibilities that you can do with visual effects, that you can do with animation, that
And there's just more and more technology coming out, and it's always like you can never get bored in
no,
visual effects.
absolutely. Like, it just blows my mind these days, like what can be rendered on a phone versus, like, I'm
I
just
know.
like, 10 years ago it took me forever to like render like a 30-second clip with like a lightsaber trick or something,
Yeah.
like. And like
Oh
these
my
days,
gosh.
it's like your machines are so powerful and like everyone can do high quality stuff just from like
Mhm.
even their laptops, right?
Even filters are just amazing, because
Yeah.
it just takes, oh my God. Um, but before, because I tend to divert a lot, so I'll hop on to the next question, which is a really fun one, which is, what's been your favorite project to work on so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've been so lucky that I've worked on a lot of really amazing projects. Being at ILM, we have this amazing clientele and work with so many different studios. It's always hard to like bring it down
Yeah.
to this one, because every project I definitely learn something new, and I like see new ways to like present things on the screen, which is really cool. But to like hone back to my super nerdy self, one of my favorite projects was actually Warcraft, because I was a
Ooh,
huge
yeah.
Warcraft nerd from the beginning. I love real-time strategy games. But yeah, it was just one of those things where the director, Duncan Jones, was just so open to like collaborating and talking with us about things, that there was one point, I think there was a trailer shot that was like showing these elves, and to get super nerdy, in the Warcraft lore, elves have different like eye colors depending on which kind of magic they're using. And so these were supposed to be high elves. And I was doing this shot, and they told me to make the eyes green. And I was all like, oh no, elves with green eyes are blood elves. They're not high elves. Um, and so I actually gave that a comment, which went all the way back to Duncan Jones. And he's like, oh yeah, we need to fix that. We need to make sure that these elves' eyes are the correct color. And it's like being able to, suggest things like that, and people actually like listen and take into thought that like, all right, we need to be as authentic as possible to this lore. it's fun. And it was just so full of, fantasy and magic, which I always love doing. It just totally hits that D&D fantasy nerd in me. So that was definitely one of my favorite projects. But, I'll be honest, a lot of the projects I work on, are very much stuff that I enjoy, content that I enjoy,
Yes.
whether it be Star Wars or Marvel or, Harry Potter, like it's there's a reason I'm in this industry, right? Like these are
Yeah.
these are all things like content and like worlds that either I grew up with or have been interested from such a young age. And I mean, the great thing about ILM is a lot of the people that I got to learn from and work with were people who like worked on the original Star Wars or like worked on ET or worked on Jurassic, Park. And you're just like, oh, you were the reason why I got like so into film, like, just knowing that you can build these worlds and like creatures and things that don't exist, and make it, work with a story that is so relatable and so human. I think that's a fun thing about film.
Yeah, and it's really crazy to think how young the industry is because and I think it probably goes with the fact of how technology is evolving. Because if we were to show a kid that, oh, okay, Jurassic Park was made at this time, they'll be like, what? They'll think it was way older because of how advanced it is now. And I think
Yeah,
that's so cool that we're able to do that and how everything is changing so rapidly.
yeah. I mean, when it comes to things like Jurassic Park or Star Wars, they were made. I mean, Star Wars was made in the 70s, right? Like what was the technology then? It was barely using any computers. Everything was very analog and very manual. But they were able to figure out tricks and ways to like give you that
All the
visual
special
experience that
effects.
you're out in space. And the fact that we have technology now that makes it so much faster and efficient and easier to get these types of effects is absolutely mind-blowing. And it's like you said, it's a pretty new industry in terms of like in comparison with the Hollywood industry overall. But a lot of the things that we do and the tricks that we do, like I said earlier, is so grounded in the filmmaking process, that you're always driving off of that. And so to me, it's like when I worked on things like Mandalorian and we were doing real-time rendering on set, that is such a nod back to the original rear projections that were used in the 50s and 60s, right? Like if you think back to films where they were like driving in a car and you just see footage going on the outside, that was just pre-shot footage that they put on projectors. But we've taken that now to the point where we have super bright LEDs that we can use. And instead of like pre-shot footage, we have real-time footage, right? Real-time rendered images that we can manipulate and adjust for whatever we need, which is really awesome.
That is amazing. And I know a lot of all the Asian Queen community have watched the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian. And we talked about it a little bit in our previous mixer, and we were just amazed by the technology. And even the fact that old special effects like puppeting and puppetry and miniatures and all of that are still being used. So that's really cool to see like the intertwined I'm forgetting the word, but
I mean, yeah,
the
absolutely.
combination of both.
The thing is like we always try to ground ourselves to reality, even though these are
Mhm.
like fantasy worlds. And sometimes what works best is something that you have
Yeah.
physically, at home, that like, let me just build this spaceship and put it in front of, my
Hmm.
monitor and have that be the actual scene, like our tools are so advanced these days. It makes the possibilities quite endless.
Hmm.
But at the same time, yeah, it's like, it's such a huge nod and, you know, it's a evolution, right, of
Yeah.
filmmaking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great that we're talking about technology because our next question sort of goes in line with that, which is with the constant advancements in visual effects and technology, is it hard to keep up sometimes? And how does it impact your work?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been such a nerd from like a young age. I've always been super into tech and new tech. So for me, like on my downtime, I'm just like reading articles or like research papers on like AI and machine learning, or like that's like something I quite enjoy. I know that's not what everyone does all the time. But yeah, I'm all about like trying to figure out, what are new ways of doing things and how can we use this new technology about it. Um, and one thing I tell folks quite often is because like I always get asked like, oh, what software should I learn? What programs should I learn? What should I be focusing on? And the thing is like software is going to change over time. Like I've only been using Nuke, not that long. Before that we had Shake. And even before that, I was like using After Effects, like you're constantly jumping around software packages. Um, and I feel like once you have a good foundation in like one 3D software package, you can pretty much jump into any. And a lot of it also really just comes down to, like I said, that I always emphasize is like, you really should have a good understanding of filmmaking. Because like, the basics of filmmaking is, you set up some cameras, some lights, an actor, and you kind of just go, right? So yeah, learn more about like the cameras, learn more about the lights, learn more about composition, learn more about how the actors are moving. Like there's a very non-digital technology driven side of visual effects and filmmaking that I feel like a lot of people forget. And being able to understand that whole process will make you a much better artist, digital artist down the line.
No, yeah, exactly. And sort of understanding, even having drawing talent or anything that also is very helpful, even though it's digital. Like, not that people who cannot draw cannot do CG thing, because I know a lot of people who do that. But
I'm
that's
one of
really,
those. I
yeah,
can
I can't draw either. But I know there's a lot of people who are incredibly talented in like software is like Houdini, and they can do all those pyro and things, and they also are amazing artists when it comes to drawing and things. So I always envy them because it's so cool to have that understanding of how a body moves, and sort of like being able to draw all of that.
Yeah.
But
But it's funny because like,
yeah,
as cool as you bring up the fire in Houdini, just remind me, it's really cool to be able to do effects like that. And we have some amazing effects artists in our industry. Some of them have like PhDs in physics, like it's
yeah.
the amount of talent behind it is so incredible. And I love watching them work. But there are tricks and ways around, dealing with fire that doesn't require a full simulation, right? Like sometimes, again, go back to traditional filmmaking. Like if you need like a little fire flame, why don't you go outside in your garden, put up some black and like start a little fire and film that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times, I guess this is where my compositing kicks in. There's a lot of times where, I tell artists that like it's easier to just shoot something yourself than to like try and render a whole thing. Like at the end of the day, one of them is going to look a lot more realistic because it is real. And so to me, I'm always like, don't overcomplicate things. Just go to the fundamentals and go down to the basics. If you're missing an element and it's something that you can do in your own house or in your own backyard, you should do that.
Yes, especially I think there was this movie we watched, which I can't remember, but it was like one of those old movies where all the effects were special effects. So like if a building was burning, they would just have a miniature of a building and then like close like, down angles so it looks like it's huge, and then it just burned. And it's just because effects have been going on for so long, it's just sort of tricking the eye and
Exactly.
thinking that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's fun making models, making miniatures to like kind of do what you need instead of doing a whole render. Sometimes
Yeah.
does a job a lot better. And a lot of times you can find a lot of the materials right in your house. Like I remember, was it Deep Impact? One of the space movies that ILM has done a million space movies, but one of the space movies, they had this spaceship that had all this like gold material on the outside, and they made a miniature version, and all that gold material was actually the wrapper from Rolo candy. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's just like aluminum gold, and they just like found that,
That's
and that was like
amazing.
perfect material to use. So yeah, I love when you can be resourceful and think out of the box, and it be a combination of something practical with something digital. But realizing, where those limitations are.
Yeah.
Because, when you create your work, it's, bound by time, by your technology, etc. And so it's always about figuring out the best way to create the images you need.
Yes. And sort of though, let's the next question, which is, I know you mentioned there's a lot of films that inspired you, and I wanted to ask, is there a movie or a production that you wish you could have worked on, and why?
Oh, absolutely. There's so many films out there that I'm just all like, oh, that would have been so fun to work on. But I think one of the ones that really stand out to me is like, I've always been such a huge Wes Anderson fan, and his like
Mhm.
stop motion animation, specifically with like Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs. Like, I felt like it was such a breath of fresh air seeing those kind of projects, because again, it's such a combination of the best of both worlds, right? You have practical stop motion animation, but at the same time, there's some visual effects that are being used in it, and he just seems like a very, like, it'd be cool to understand the mind of Wes Anderson and like see how he gets to these ideas of like creating this kind of like look or style. So yeah, I would love to work with him and any of his projects.
Yes, that is so cool. And I'm still waiting for the new stop motion films. I love that they're still there's a lot of studios who are putting in so much time to make those. So excited for how the digital streaming service world will
Yes.
help out with those. And sort of this is actually a little fun question, which is, what are some of your hobbies or activities you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah, that's like, you know, it's one of those fun questions to ask, because I feel like a lot of what I do for my day job is very much things that I used to
Yeah.
do as my hobby. I think that's why I got into it. Um, and, for me, I think a lot of it just stems from visuals and creating things. Like, without a doubt, like being a nerd that I still am, I'm very much like, I love playing video games on the side. So, like, whether it be, like Untitled Goose Game on my Switch, or like Cyberpunk 2077 on my PC. Like, I love all these different mediums and different styles of video games that you can play. But beyond that, I generally try to not be on like a computer or a screen when I don't need to, just because these days, we're just constantly in front of the computer, right? And so for me, I just love DIY projects around the house. Like, I just moved into this house in November, and it's been a lot of like, I want to paint this wall. I'm going to paint this wall. Or like, um, little things like converting a cabinet into like a litter box holder, for my cat. Or like, doing some things out in the garden to, make things prettier. Like, I love hands-on things, and just like being able to manipulate and create something physically in addition to doing something, digitally for my day job. So yeah, for me, it's a lot of just like being able to still create, because for me, I find that, being able to just like focus on one thing and create it is very relaxing to me.
Oh yes, for sure. Especially, I know a lot of my friends love baking, and we're
Oh my
just
God,
like,
I cooked so much during this lockdown.
it's just,
I've
especially
done-
now,
Yeah,
typically what we would do is like go to at least on the East Coast, like Kroger or like those grocery stores and get cookies and things like that. But now, since we have been like locked in for a long time, we're like, why don't we just make it ourselves? And then that made
absolutely.
everyone just bakers.
Yeah, like
The
my
British
actually,
baking show.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, at work we've been doing a bake off. At one point, I think we were
That's
doing
awesome.
a bake off every other week. And like, the annoying thing of working with other creatives is that they're just as creative and good at
Yeah.
baking. And so it was really tough competition, but it was so much fun.
Oh my God, was there what is one of the foods you made for a bake-off before?
Oh,
If you'd like to talk
well,
about it.
because I'm out in England now, and like the Brits really do their
Mhm.
do their baking seriously. Um, I really enjoyed making a Victoria sponge cake. It was very like
Ooh, yeah.
traditional and very nice. Um, what else did I make? Oh, I made like um macaroons, which was really
Oh,
fun, but quite
those are
tough.
kind of hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made croissants, which was like, I didn't
Yes.
realize how long it takes and how much butter it was, but like it was a good experience. But so much baked goods, I probably gained a lot of weight, but it was worth it.
I know. Just, oh my God, baking is such a good thing. And then just seeing it rise or just,
Yes.
in the oven, you're just, oh, it's beautiful.
I did
But
make what was it, 7-tier rainbow cake, which was quite fun. Just
whoa,
because like why
was it
not?
like
Right?
every tier was a different color or was it
Yeah,
all of them? Oh,
yeah.
did you
Every
have like
tier is a
layers
different
on the
color.
inside
I
or
put I did a buttercream in between each layer,
ooh,
and
okay.
then like icing sugar on the outside. So it's like
That's
white, but then you
beautiful.
cut into it and it's just like RGB,
Oh
like
my God.
it's great.
That is amazing. Um, do you have like a baking Instagram? Because I would love to follow that.
No, I don't. I felt like that might have been too extreme.
That's so
I
cool.
definitely posted on my Insta stories, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I know we have a couple minutes before we go to audience questions. So the last question I would like to ask is, before we went live, I talked about like how women in visual effects has impacted me and how it inspires me. So I wanted to ask, what is women in visual effects for those who don't know? And uh, oh, sorry. And then what is one thing you learned since you began the process of that?
Yeah, so I started Women VFX back in, I want to say 2000, what was it, 2017? No, 16, sorry, 2016. Um, and the reason I started it was because I definitely just wanted to, number one, see more women in our industry, but also make it like get their stories and get their experiences out there because everyone had such a different experience coming into this industry. And like I said before, there are so many talented women and people of color in our industry, and I wanted to give them a platform to have the chance to talk about their experiences. So I started this video series on YouTube where, I interviewed people one at a time and kind of just like went through what their experience was like coming into the industry. I had folks who, have been in the industry for 20 plus years, to folks who are brand new. And it was so eye-opening hearing about all their experiences. There were definitely common things that came up, like, it's very difficult being a mother in the industry. There's a lot of high expectations of what, women can do. Um, and, these common themes kept on coming up, but at the same time, everyone had such a unique story into the industry. Like we had folks who were, um, making actual practical models back in the days, and then moving to this digital realm and seeing how that was, and talking about how their time on set, there was always like sexist comments or catcalls being made at them. Um, and it's disheartening hearing about these, and especially for a lot of the moms, they who have daughters, they talk about like, this is not an industry I would ever want my daughter to get into, which can be very disheartening. But at the same time, I think, being open and honest about this is the only way we can get through it, right? Like I think these discussions need to happen. And the more we discuss it, and the more we discuss it amongst one another and within our companies, then the more people are aware of the issue. We're so used to being quiet and silent about it and just like kind of trudging through it. And I'm kind of done doing that. Like I want our voices to be heard. I want you to see that we have supervisors, we have people in tech, we have people in, R&D, they're all around us in visual effects and animation, and just want to celebrate women.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just like the start. We're still like, we still have a lot of work to do, but later, I mean, hopefully we're gonna get there. And
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's been such a there has been a change. Like I'm definitely seeing that
yeah,
change. The more I see younger generations coming into the industry, the more diverse and the more, talent that I see. And it's really great. One of the main things I'm trying to make sure that happens within my company is that we are, doing everything we can to retain that talent, that we're nurturing and training and teaching
yeah.
them and giving them that proper career path that they should have. So, like you said, there's still a lot of work to be done, but
Mhm.
it's 10 times better than when I first started in the industry.
Mhm.
And it'll be even better by the time, you guys graduate and get into the industry
Yeah,
as well.
yes, definitely. And we do have a couple audience questions, which we could start diving into. So,
Yeah.
uh, funnily, the first question is, what are some programs you use on a daily basis for compositing?
Yeah, so for compositing, I can tell you hands down, it's just Nuke majority of the time.
Yeah,
If you do a little bit or dabble in motion graphics, definitely After Effects. But generally it's Nuke. Occasionally I would jump into some 3D software packages if I need specific thing like export myself some geo or some cameras or lights that were used in other packages. But generally it's Nuke. And yeah, kind of like what I was saying earlier, the more you understand every single part of the process in the pipeline, the better of a compositor you'll be.
yeah,
Because as a compositor, you're the one at the end, right? You're the one putting it all together. And if you don't understand where the elements, and CG renders that you're getting are being made, then you can't get the best image out there. So understand as much as you can from modeling to animation, like I said, to
yeah.
rendering.
Awesome. And our next question is there a way to join women in visual effects or a way to get involved and help?
Yeah, so I mean, Women VFX isn't like a proper organization or anything. We're just like
Mhm.
a bunch of women who are going around and interviewing folks and just getting the word out there that,
Yeah,
come tell stories or come, listen and view some stories. So if you know women out there who are complete badasses, because I'm sure you guys do, let me know, and
yes.
let's see if we can interview more folks. And, if you're
Hear
willing
their
to help
stories.
interview as well, that'd be great because we're just here to help, push each other up. The more voices we can get out there, the better.
Yes, exactly. And so our next question is sort of more career related industry, get like breaking in. So the question is, what are some qualities that make a really good demo reel for an entry level compositing position?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So generally when I look at compositing reels, I'm more interested in how you got to that process of your composition. Like breakdowns are always great, but it's things like, all right, I shot this footage in front of green screen and then put this CG element behind it, but like, tell me about your process. Like, I love actually when people have accompanying text to go with their demo reel, where they explain, oh, so in this CG render, we have these things, but I ended up using some practical plate here and there, and like, just, in detail, tell me about things. Because, when you first start out, you're not going to have the giant movie projects or things like that on your reel, which is completely understandable. So the more you can tell me about your process and how you think about compositing, um, the better you are with your demo reel.
Yeah, no, for sure. And all those detailed, I know at least in our school, we do a lot of blog posts where we put
Yep,
our weekly um, updates on like what we've been doing, failures and successes, just
exactly.
because
Yeah.
um, it's not all perfect. There's always a lot of things that fail.
I mean, like one question I generally like asking a lot in interviews is if you can go back to a shot that you did in the past, how would you
Mhm.
do it differently? Or do you feel like you achieved what you needed to do in that shot? Because, as artists, we're constantly, trying to get that perfect shot. We're always aiming for perfection, but that doesn't exist, right? So if you were given all the time in the world, how would you make a shot look better than how it is currently?
Mhm. That's a really good question to ask. And so everyone who's watching, please prepare that when you're interviewing. um, our next question is, what was the process of moving up to a lead position? And what are some qualities you feel like people would need in order to lead in visual effects?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I feel like one thing we forget about doing when it comes to visual effects is, our interpersonal human skills, our soft skills. Like a lot of leadership is less about do you know everything and how to do things the best way. It's more about are you able to help and assist your team to get the best results out there. And sometimes, that comes down to like how are you doing? Are you in your best state to be working on this shot? And for me, it's a lot of just like making sure my team is not overburdened with too many shots or are not, working crazy hours because you will never get the best results if you're just like tired all the time and working nonstop. So for me, I feel like what you're looking for in a lead is people who can connect and relate to people and understand what those people need in order to get the shot done. And a lot of it is really things like time management, which is really silly to think about, but it's such an important thing because we have really intense schedules. Sometimes it's quick turnarounds, and we need to be able to make sure people are not overworked. So to me, it's very important that my team is in their best state. Otherwise, we'll never get the results we want.
Yes, for sure. There's a lot of, I love that there was one person I met who said being a leader is sort of like being a mom, making sure everyone's okay. And then,
Yep.
are you good? You're okay? Because that's very important too. And so I love that you mentioned that because it's always, we don't want to, um, like you said, overburden someone. And, it's always also mental health is very important, especially in
Yeah.
visual effects. It's a very fast industry. And
Super fast paced. And then everyone is like, sometimes you can't help but feel like a cog in machine, but we're
mhm.
not machines, right? We're all individuals who have, needs. And we need to make sure that we are aware of everyone's needs before we put them into a really tough scenario, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good answer. And I will dive into the next question, which is a little hard, I guess. It might be hard to answer, but what can we do to help encourage more diversity within the industry?
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of companies are really trying to figure out what that answer is. I
Mhm.
don't think anyone has the right answer
Yeah.
yet, like it's one of those things where, the fundamental basis of it all is like education and acknowledgement, right? Like, are you are you as an individual, but also are we as a company able to acknowledge that we do have this issue to begin with? you know, Look around. Does it reflect what society is? If your answer is no, then clearly you have work to be done. And so I feel like what we can do, is again, let's talk with more people of color. Let's talk with more LGBT folks. Let's talk with more, women. It's all about getting the word out there that this is a possible career and you can completely excel in this industry. Um, and it's just a matter of getting them in the door. And I do plenty of talks with universities and schools, but at the same time, if you're getting an education, that is a privilege. And sometimes some of the best talent, are, there were those, what was it? There's so many kids out there all across the world who are making incredible things, just from their phone or just from their, computer on their own. And, they're not going to those Ivy League universities, or they're not going to, those specific VFX, programs. And, we need to be able to reach out to everyone. And I think a lot of that comes from, reaching out at a really young age. So again, to me, it's like, I will completely continue advocating for this industry because it's, like I said, it's fun, it's great, it's doable, and there are so many people that will support you on your journey. Um, And, you know, like I said, when I was talking about leading is, you know, giving people those opportunities when you see that high potential. Um, and, you know, being able to give them that career path, you know, helping them guide them along the way, because again, it really is all doable.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, there's a lot of people who are wanting to come into the industry. So slowly, you know, it's going to happen at some point. We just have to find our foot in the door. And I
Yeah,
love that companies are taking that step and working with organizations like Women in Animation and Latinx in Animation, Rise Up Animation, and all of them are working together to sort of um, find that solution to bring that representation on and off screen. So it's this decade is going to be a whirlwind of a change.
oh, for sure.
And I'll sort of hop to the next question, which is what are the biggest misconceptions about visual effects that bother you?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly touched upon it earlier when I was saying quite often people just think, you know, we're a cog in a machine. All we do is
Mhm.
just push buttons. Um, but the thing is, you know, we're all creative individuals who are so passionate about, you know, being creative and making this content, you know, for animations or films, that like, you know, sit down and learn about like all these people who are making these things. And like for me, I've always been a huge fan of those like behind the scenes kind of footage stuff, and you know, being able to listen to interviews of just like how people did things or got into the industry. And so for me, you know, I just want to humanize our industry. It's just one of those things where it's like it's so easy to forget that there are so many people behind creating things like this. Like, you know, it just blows my mind how many, like they were saying that, what was it, 400 or so people were working from home to make Raya, right? And it's like, that's a lot of people. And this film is absolutely wonderful. Um, and so, you know, I just
And it
want
was
to
all made from
clap.
home.
Yeah, I want to clap and applaud every single one of those, you know, individuals who worked on those projects, because yeah, it's just, you know, it takes it takes these people who make such touching and human stories that, you know, really affect us and, you know, as consumers and as audience. So yeah, I want to push us away from thinking we're just people who push buttons, and it's more about people who really do create and are so passionate about this creativity that, you know their names.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that was something it might or might not relate, but I love that with the current shows that are coming on Disney Plus, they're starting to put in the credits for most of the artists, and I hope all of the artists, but you know, before it used to be very short, but now they're
Yeah,
doing that, which I really appreciate because now you can finally go and see everyone who's was
yeah.
worked behind the process.
I've been so impressed with that with Disney Plus. Like, I actually I was quite surprised. I only did a week on WandaVision just to help out at the end, and they still give me credit on that episode. And it's like they took the time to
Yeah.
properly credit each company and each person that worked on each episode. And it's so rare for studios to do that. Like for them, it's like it costs too much to have
Yeah.
all these title cards. Let's just move on.
Mm.
So, you know, I think that really does help us humanize the people who create films and create these projects.
Yeah. And I know we're at our last 5 minutes, so I'll ask whatever questions we can till then. But we did have a question come in, which is where do you see the world of visual effects going in the next 5 years?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I mean, I don't think visual effects is disappearing anytime soon or
Oh,
going
yeah.
away anytime soon. Like
They'll
there
just
are a
be
lot of
more.
times where people are like, oh, all the AI and machine learning are gonna, you know, run us out of a job. Everything is moving to real-time rendering. You know, like there's definitely a lot of worries out there, but I don't think anyone should be worried. Because, you know, at the end of the day, there may be certain things that, you know, are not, you know, there are certain things that may become automated because of machine learning, but that leaves us room to, you know, push the envelope more on innovation and creativity. Like, I'll be honest with you, if I don't need to do another green screen extraction, I'll be the happiest person in the world. Like, no one likes doing extractions. Like, you want to like make the shot look as best as possible and be as creative as possible with it. So, I think it opens the door to, bring in more of that creativity, which is what I'm looking more forward to. I think what will change more will probably be things like including post-production work more during the production of things, right? So like one thing great about virtual production is that, visual effects artists are now looped in with the crew when they're shooting, and we're able to give that much more insight to the overall filming of things, as opposed to, I hate that line that a lot of directors say, which is, we'll fix it in post. And it's like, no, like, shoot things right,
Yes,
and then you'll get it the best, right? Like,
that's
don't
why
fix it in post.
I loved when I was watching the Mandalorian gallery series where Jon Favreau said that they want to film it right. And I was like, oh my God, they're taking it like they're not saying, well, let's fix it in post kind of thing. And
Yeah,
like they truly understand the filmmaking process and like the effects and everything to sort of think ahead and be like, oh, we have to do this right now so that we can improve it later, but we
exactly.
can't fix it.
Like visual effects is, it's always been there to aid the storytelling, right? It's
Mhm.
not there to um, fix things that wasn't done correctly on set.
Yeah.
But lately, a lot of it has been that, right? Which is sad, because that means it's just lazy filmmaking. And if you really are behind the story that you're trying to get out there, then you'll do it right at the beginning. And and part of that is including your visual effects team. It's including the
Mhm.
people that will be helping you create those worlds that we can't
Yeah.
film on.
Yeah, exactly. And to wrap up with our last question, which is what is something you wish you had known earlier in your career that would have helped with your professional development?
Yes. Um, I feel like when I first started off, I was a lot more introverted and quiet. And, I think that comes a lot from my Chinese upbringing of, like, kind of blend with everyone else, be in the background, don't bring any attention. And I felt like I was definitely limiting myself when I was like trying to keep to myself and just like learn on my own. And it wasn't until I was more confident to approach people and ask questions and ask how things are done that that's when I actually really started to learn a lot more about visual effects. There's only so much you can learn from, books and YouTube and trying to like teach yourself. But really where you can learn the most is from other people's experiences. So, there's a lot of times where I'm like, if a problem takes you longer than 30 minutes to figure it out, ask for help. There's no point in stewing on something for a really long time. Um, Everyone in our industry you know, is so well experienced and so willing to help and teach. You should grab that whenever chance you get, because yeah, it's all about, collaboration and discussing things out loud. So ask questions and ask questions early.
Yes, that's really good advice, especially um, as entry levels when we are first starting out. It's really scary and intimidating to ask for help, but sometimes that's the best way to learn. And aren't I feel like everyone in the industry, at least everyone I've met, are super kind and they just want to help you learn. And like
Yeah,
you said earlier, support you and pull you up so that you
exactly.
can grow. And that is amazing.
Cool. Yes, definitely do all that.
Yeah, and so I know we already hit time, so thank you, Charmaine, for all your time and for spending an hour with us. And thank you to everyone who's watching and who will be tuning in later um, in the day or later in the week. But thank you all for coming in, and thank you, Charmaine, for telling us about your experience. And honestly really inspired by just this hour conversation. And for everyone who's watching, feel free to check out Women in Visual Effects Visual Effects' website, they have and YouTube, they have a bunch of interviews with a lot of industry professionals in visual effects. So a great opportunity to be inspired um, whenever you're feeling like, oh, I need a little inspiration. That's the best place to go.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
This was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
thank you. I'll just end the stream right now, but thank you guys, and I'll see you later.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Um, there we go. I love how